On the shores of a small coastal village, where the golden sand kissed the azure waters of the ocean, there lived a fisherman named Mateo. Mateo's life was simple. He had a modest wooden boat, a small house shaded by palm trees, and a loving family. Every morning he set out to sea, casting his nets and gathering enough fish to feed his family in trade for essentials. He spent his afternoons with his children, his evenings with his wife, and his nights under the starlit sky, contemplating the rhythm of the waves. Mateo's days were peaceful, but not everyone saw his life that way. One sunny morning, as Mateo unloaded his catch at the village dock, a man in a sharp suit approached him. The man was a wealthy businessman named Alexander, who had come to the village on vacation. "Good morning," Alexander greeted Mateo with a smile. "That's quite a haul you've got there. How long did it take you to catch these fish?" Mateo wiped his brow and replied, "A few hours. I fish in the early morning when the sea is calm and the fish are plentiful." "Only a few hours?" Alexander asked, surprised. "Why don't you fish longer and catch more?" Mateo chuckled. "Why would I do that? This is enough for my family and a little extra to trade for what we need." Alexander frowned. "But think about it. If you worked longer, you could catch twice, maybe 3 times as much. With the extra fish, you could sell to more buyers and save money." Mateo tilted his head, intrigued. "And what would I do with the money?" Alexander's eyes lit up. "You could buy a bigger boat. With a bigger boat, you could catch even more fish. Eventually, you could buy a fleet of boats and hire other fishermen to work for you. You could build a thriving business and become a wealthy man like me." Mateo scratched his chin thoughtfully. "And after I become wealthy, what would I do?" Alexander's smile widened. "Then you could retire. You'd have all the time in the world to relax, spend time with your family, and enjoy life." Mateo's eyes sparkled with amusement. "But isn't that what I'm already doing?" Alexander was taken aback. He had no response. Mateo nodded politely and carried his basket of fish home, leaving the businessman standing on the dock, pondering the wisdom in the fisherman's words. Though Alexander left the village soon after, the brief conversation lingered in Mateo's mind. He began to notice how others in the village lived. There were those who toiled endlessly, hoping to build larger homes, acquire more possessions, or earn greater status. Mateo wondered, were they truly happier than he was? One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, Mateo sat with his wife, Sophia, on their porch. He shared his thoughts about Alexander's proposal. "Do you think we're missing out by not striving for more?" he asked her. Sophia smiled warmly and placed her hand on his. "We have everything we need, Mateo. Our children laugh, our bellies are full, and our hearts are content. What more could we ask for?" Her words reassured Mateo, yet he couldn't shake the curiosity that had been sparked. He decided to seek wisdom from an elder in the village, a retired fisherman named Antonio, who was known for his deep insights. The next morning, Mateo visited Antonio, who was sitting under a banyan tree weaving a fishing net. Mateo explained his encounter with Alexander and shared his doubts. Antonio listened carefully and then smiled. "Let me tell you a story, Mateo." He set down his work and began. "There was once a teacher who stood before his students with a large glass jar. He filled the jar with large rocks and asked his students if it was full. They said yes. Then he added pebbles, which filled the spaces between the rocks, and asked again. The students agreed it was now full. Finally, he poured sand into the jar, filling every tiny crevice. Mateo nodded, intrigued. "What was the lesson?" Antonio continued. "The rocks represent the most important things in life: family, health, and inner peace. The pebbles are the less important things like work and possessions. The sand is everything else, the trivial things. If you fill the jar with sand first, there's no room for the rocks or pebbles, but if you prioritize the rocks, there's always room for the rest." Mateo smiled, understanding the analogy. "So you're saying I've already filled my jar with rocks?" Antonio chuckled. "Exactly. And that's a rare wisdom many never find." One stormy night, the sea raged with ferocity, and many fishermen lost their boats to the tempest. Mateo's modest vessel, anchored in a sheltered cove, survived. When morning came, several villagers approached him, asking for help rebuilding their lives. Without hesitation, Mateo offered his time and skills. For weeks, he worked alongside his neighbors, mending nets, crafting new boats, and sharing his catch with those who had none. Though his days were long and tiring, his heart felt full. As the village slowly returned to normalcy, Mateo's reputation grew. People began to seek his advice, not just on fishing, but on life itself. "How do you find contentment with so little?" they often asked. Mateo's response was always the same: "Because I have enough. And when you know what enough is, you find true wealth." Years later, Alexander returned to the village. This time, his demeanor was different. He appeared weary, with lines of stress etched on his face. Seeing Mateo on the dock, he approached him once more. "Mateo, it's good to see you again," Alexander said, though his voice lacked the confidence it once had. "Welcome back," Mateo replied warmly. "How have you been?" Alexander sighed. "I built my empire, just as I told you I would. I have wealth, power, and everything I dreamed of. But I've lost my family, my health, and my peace of mind along the way." Mateo placed a comforting hand on Alexander's shoulder. "It seems you've filled your jar with sand," he said gently. Alexander's eyes welled with tears. "I wish I had listened to you all those years ago." Mateo invited Alexander to his home, where Sophia prepared a simple meal. They shared stories, laughter, and silence. And for the first time in years, Alexander felt a sense of calm. Before leaving the village, Alexander asked Mateo for one last piece of advice. "What can I do to find the peace you have?" Mateo thought for a moment and replied, "Start by asking yourself what truly matters. Let go of the unnecessary and focus on what fills your heart, not just your hands." Alexander nodded, determined to change his life. He left the village with a lighter heart and a newfound understanding of Mateo's wisdom. The moral of the story. The story of Mateo and Alexander teaches us that happiness is not found in the relentless pursuit of more, but in recognizing and cherishing what we already have. Simplicity and balance allow us to focus on what truly matters, creating a life of contentment and fulfillment. In a world that often equates success with accumulation, Mateo's wisdom reminds us that less can indeed be more. By filling our lives with the rocks of love, health, and peace, we discover the true wealth that no amount of material possessions can provide. If you enjoy this story, please like this video and comment, and subscribe our channel Imaginea for more motivational story. Thanks for watching.